Well, good morning. Welcome back to GP Outdoors. If you watched the last video, which is number 211, you'll know that I finally, after 2 winters, decided I was going to buy some tire chains for the back to get improved traction and especially for safety, because I tend to have trouble getting up the big steep hill on the driveway. What I didn't know is whether or not I was going to need wheel spacers for my B2601. Turns out I need them. Let me show you why. So I took a bar and I just bent out this little edge of the fender a little bit so you could see a little better down in between the wheel and the fender well. You'll notice this is the right side rear of the tractor. I've got the chains on. They're pretty thick, and as you know, there's a shackle and a fastener that goes on both sides of these chains. If you look down into the back of this wheel well, you'll see that there's hydraulic lines as well as a bunch of electrical wires that are strapped to and wind down and underneath this fender close to the tire. I wasn't sure if I was going to need the wheel spacers, which is why I got these chains early before the snow flies, and I wanted to test fit them. And although when I drive the tractor through the yard, every couple of turns I can hear a scrape. I don't hear it often, but the fact that I've got hydraulic hoses and electrical wires sitting there under that fender, I don't want to take the chance. So unfortunately, I had to spend the extra money, get myself some wheel spacers. So I called up the good folks at Larkin Equipment, my Kubota dealer, and sure enough, within a day, they had the wheel spacer kit ready for me. So just a couple of quick things before we begin today. For those that don't follow the channel, I just want you to know that I'm not a mechanic. I don't have a mechanical background, and in fact, I have never done anything like this before, whether it's on a vehicle or a car or a tractor. So I decided yesterday before I began filming, I was going to try doing one of the tires first, and it was quite a learning experience, and you're soon going to find out why. Second thing is, as you watch me do it today, I'm not suggesting this is the right way or the only way to do it. It's just the way I'm doing it. And based on discussions I've had at the dealership with Kubota, some friends that are mechanical, a lot of online searching, especially on tractor forums on this very topic of trying to remove these studs off of the axle, that's how I've come to the way I'm about to show you how I'm going to do the left-hand tire. Stick around, let's go over the parts and let's start getting the tire off. Cheers. So here's what you're going to need today, at least for the B2601. You're going to need your Kubota manual, because the manual on page 41 is going to tell you where the appropriate lift points are on this tractor, both front and rear, which is where you're going to need to be able to put your jack stands. You're going to need your B8786 wheel spacer kit. The kit will come with 2 wheel spacers, pretty heavy by the way, and a bag of replacement studs that you need to put on the hub on the axle. Also very important to note, the spacer kit says that it's good for B2320s, B2620s, B2920, B2301, and B2601. Most notably, it doesn't mention anything about the 2650, so you may want to check your part numbers if you have a 2650. You're going to need a 22 millimeter socket for the wheel lugs or nuts. You're going to need your 1/2-inch ratchet and an extension, don't forget, for the back tires. You're going to need a torque wrench. You're going to need 1 or 2 22 millimeter wrenches. Don't forget your safety glasses, and make sure you're wearing gloves, because you're going to find as you go along, you're going to start seeing a lot of metal shavings. We'll see that in a minute. You're going to need some blue Loctite. Not red, blue. You may want to bring a couple of crescent wrenches or adjustable wrenches. And surprisingly, I found out yesterday, you're going to need a mallet, and it's probably a good idea to get a good heavy-duty pipe wrench or 2. Lastly, when you order your wheel spacer kit, you may want to order another set of wheel nuts for both tires, so 12 in total. You'll see why in a minute. Okay, that pretty much wraps it up. Let's get her done. Buckets dropped to the ground. Check. All wheels except the one I'm working on are chalked. Check. Parking brake is engaged. Check. Tractor is in neutral. Check. The 3-point hitch is lifted to its highest position to keep it out of the way. Check. Because we're working outside today and I don't have a nice solid cement or hard foundation to work on, I put some big chunks of wood underneath where I'm putting my trolley jack as well as my jack stands to make sure that they have some stability as they start to lift weight. I'm going to use the lift points under the tractor as places to put my jack stands. So I spoke to the mechanic at the Kubota dealer. He told me that the best place back here to put your hydraulic jack was right underneath your drawbar. In your owner's manual, as I mentioned, on page 41, it'll show you a picture of the undercarriage of the tractor, and it'll tell you where the 2 lift points are, where you're allowed to lift from or place jack stands. However, you may find that the underside of your tractor looks nothing like this picture. So what I did is, I assumed that these 2 big thick rails that run through the bottom of the tractor must be part of the chassis or the frame. So I've decided to place my 2 jack stands, one on either side, and I'll use that as my anchor point for safety. So before you lift the tractor at all, while it's on the ground, loosen up your wheel nuts. You want to lift it just enough to get the tire lightly resting on the ground, because you're going to need to shimmy it off after, and it weighs a lot, especially when they're filled with rim guard. I'm going to adjust my jacks just a little bit. Make sure they're placed well. I left the top one on because once I take this off, you're going to want to try to shimmy the tire off without having it fall over, because you want to rest it wherever you're going to place it for the rest of this job. You want to keep it standing up because it weighs a lot. So here's where it gets a little challenging, and it's going to take a long time, so I won't put you through the whole thing. But what I've learned is there are basically, if you don't have a garage with a pneumatic, drill and, one of those fancy tools that somehow backs out studs and things, you're going to end up probably with 2 different methods that are going to work. According to both friends, the mechanic, the tractor forums that I read through the threads through last night, basically how I had to do it, and it was the only way I could get them out. First way is what they call the cram nut method, where you're going to put 2 nuts together, you're going to tighten them up really tight, and then you're going to try to reef these off, and I'll show you what happens after that's done. Second method we're going to use is we're going to use a pipe wrench on these. The thing I learned after I worked through this yesterday is that these studs are probably Loctited with either red Loctite or something just as permanent, because there is no chance that you're going to reef these off just with your muscles. You're going to need a hammer to break them loose, or at least to get them to start turning, and then after that you're going to be able to turn them off, although they're hard all the way through. Let's do the cram nut method first. You also want to make sure that you put them in as far as possible, because there's not enough threading on the end of the stud to fit both nuts fully. So you want to get that in really tight, then get your other one up snug behind it. Okay, and as you might have figured out, these studs go in clockwise and they come out counterclockwise. Hold your... You'll notice that the first few times I hit it, you could see both nuts were turning, because it takes a while before they crimp together. So herein lies the problem that I read through on those tractor forums last night, and that I found myself yesterday. These studs are like cemented in here so tight that the force that you're needing to use to try to turn them is so great that you start to either shave the nuts, or the nut eventually moves so far that it comes off the end of the stud. So we're going to take this thing off. Going to need a little bit of wrenching, because I'm pretty sure this nut is most likely cross-threaded. And then we're going to try the pipe wrench. 1. So it looks like the pipe wrench wins the day. I'm probably just going to use this method to get the other 5 off because it seems to be a lot more effective than trying to cram nuts. Let's get back after I get these off. Okay, all of the studs are out of the axle hub. And of course, not surprisingly, the hardest one is the one I showed you. And of course, I dinged up a little bit on the inside here, but I think it'll be okay. Got them out. At the end of the day, pipe wrench wins. I didn't have to ruin any wheel nuts, which means if I had started this way in the beginning, it would have been a lot easier. Because once these teeth grab, you give her a few hits with the hammer, and you'll start to see it turn. And once she turns, it's all just muscle after that. You just keep grinding it out. So hey, another lesson learned. Next step, you're going to take the replacement studs, which came with your wheel spacer kit, and you'll notice, and I'll try to zoom in here for you, that there's a long threaded end and a short threaded end. One is 18 millimeters, I think, and the other one's about 27 or 28. It's the short end that you want to put into the axle hub, not the long end. You need the long end out, and you want to make sure that when you put it in, you're going to take it all the way in until you get to this shank, and you want to get that kind of buried in there. So a little bit of Loctite. You're going to need your socket, of course, and your ratchet. And you're probably going to need to do the nut method because you're going to need something to grip onto that you can turn that back in. Because trust me, it's tight all the way through. There's no loose area. Let's get her done. The instructions are going to tell you a torque range that you need to torque this into the axle hub, and then of course you'll have to torque the wheel nuts after you put the tire on. I'm going to set mine at 54 pounds. That's it. Even doing that 54 pounds of torque actually causes that wheel nut to compress a bit, making it a little bit tougher to get off, but I think the threads are fine. Let's get back together after I get the rest on. Okay. Studs went in just like they were supposed to. Everything's good. Say that when you put the wheel spacer on, this indented part is supposed to fit snugly into here and flush against the axle hub. Okay, this part's going to take a little bit of finessing. I've got a couple of wheel nuts in my pocket. I've got this on. It's nice and flush. I'm going to try to finesse the wheel into place. And all I want to do right now is I just want to try to get one of these studs through a hole so I can put a nut on it. Might take a little bit of finessing with the hydraulic jack. We'll see how it goes. So I'm not sure if finesse was the right word to get this tire on. It took me about 15 minutes to keep rolling it back and forth till I could line up the holes. But once I got a couple of the studs through the hole, I just threw a few nuts on, and now I can lift it up so I can get the other nuts on and then start working on getting them tight. There we go. When you're tightening this, you want to make sure the wheel is totally off the ground because you need to have it line up with the inside of that wheel spacer. And what I noticed is if you've got any pressure on this tire and it's on the ground with any weight on it, it's difficult to try to get these nuts to seat properly to allow it to center itself on this ring, this inner ring. So make sure that you're off the ground and there's no weight on it. Okay, time for the torque wrench. Manual calls for between 94 and 110 pounds of torque. I'm going to set mine at 105. Similar to the last one, don't ask me why. I honestly don't know why there's a range of torque. I figured it would just be one simple value because I think in the book it calls for roughly the same range. So I'm going to set them at 105 and then we'll see how that goes over the next couple of days. Well, to say this was a learning experience, that's an understatement. But once again, I did enjoy doing something myself, especially for the first time. Learned a lot. Well, thanks so much for sticking around today. I hope it was informative or it was of value. Really happy I got these done before the snow flies and before we get into negative temperatures. I'm winter ready. Got a few extra inches of space under my wheel wells. My chains will fit fine. And I'm ready when the white stuff starts to fly. If you like the channel, please click subscribe, hit the like button, and if you want to know when I'm posting more videos, just click that little bell. Have a wonderful week with your families. I'll see you again on the next one. Cheers.